Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 12 o'clock now, so let's just say afternoon, actually. I'm pretty certain it's not good for most people, but hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is well outside of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And yeah, we have had two pretty stellar days of falling for Bitcoin. But if you actually think about it, for the last 10 days or so, we've lost 15,000, just under 15,000 dollars, so around about 20% of its value. And I suppose the question really is, what is going on? Where is this likely to stop? Will it stop? And is there anything in the charts that can kind of either give us a glimmer of hope as to where price may be going to next, or at least actually give us some sort of clue as a convenient exit if that's the strategy you want to take. So we're going to have a look at all of that. And we will just want to make sure I have gone live. I am. Okay, that's good. And we'll try and cover everything as best we can. We'll try and stick to the charts, save the new stuff for Tuesday. So as we can see here, 3-day time frame with Bitcoin. Um, this was the level we were in a couple of days ago. We actually had a fairly decent low test off that 86 level, which we've talked about before. Low tested a downtrend market, not really that strong. And as we can see, the last 2 days, the candle has just eviscerated that price action there. We lost the 86 level, which is a level we mentioned on Tuesday about focusing on. We need to make sure we don't close below that. We've only got 12 hours to go. So that could be an interesting time. And we've come down, and I've added a couple of extra lines. The lower we go, we need to find new support and resistance. And the most obvious close one is 80,600, which is where we bottomed back in November after the drop. And it's pretty much where we bottomed here. We actually got to 80,000, 81,000. So we were just a little bit higher than it. It's got some weight to it on the other side in terms of some price action in and around March and April last year. And then similarly on the move up from the Trump pump after the election win. So I think it's a decent enough level for us to at least start looking at. The one after that is 74K. That's the base of the tariff drops and has some ties and associations with the high in March of 24 and kind of where the Trump pump started just prior to the election, or just after the election win. So they're the next levels, unfortunately. We can shy away from them if we want, but the reality is they are now on our doorstep and we need to consider where they're at. Um, so I've been trying to find if there was any sort of news event or anything that really kind of triggered the price action, because yesterday it wasn't just Bitcoin. And I think we can take that at least with some sort of sigh of relief, maybe, that it's not just cryptocurrency that experienced it. Gold, silver, precious metals generally had a pullback. Stocks and shares had a pullback. And sorry, lost my train of thought there. And so with that, I couldn't really find a world event that might have said it. I thought maybe there was something Trump had said about Iran or China or Israel or Ukraine or something along those lines, but nothing really. And I think really what the reality of it is, stock markets, precious metals have been running wild, particularly precious metals. They were due a pullback. It doesn't mean that the run is over for them, but they have pulled back significantly. As you can see on the right hand side, gold today is down just under 6%. It was a lot further than that earlier on, with silver dropping. I mean, at one stage it was 20%, but it is back at 12% now. So some pretty tasty pullbacks there. Trillions of dollars wiped off the market value just from those kind of pullbacks. But that just shows you how wild they have been going. Focus on Bitcoin at the moment. We'll come back to the rest. I am concerned that we have lost that $86,000 level. The one thing that I suppose we will see on other charts, but we can find initial reassurance maybe, is where did we stop? We did stop at basically where we dropped down from November, that sort of 81, 80 and a half thousand dollar level. And I don't usually do this, but for those of you that watch regularly and you tuned in mid-December, 16th of December, we talked about how annoying the market makers are. And before a move up, they would just likely want to flash drivers back down, provide that fear again, and then make that move back up. And maybe that's exactly what is happening. Convenient, the level that we stopped at. Running into a weekend, though, that could be interesting. But in terms of fear, I mean, we're down at 16. And I have asked in the poll, where do we think we are? Bull market, bear market, no idea. And the reason I keep on coming back to sort of fear and greed, the length of time we've spent in fear is historic. It's never happened before, particularly in a bear market. But I would argue even in a bull market, but I'd argue even in a bear market, I don't think we've been down with these extreme fear values for as long as we've seen. I mean, for the last 3 months, I showed this on Tuesday, we have effectively been in fear for 98% of the time, extreme fear for over 50% of the time. Just absolutely wild. We go back to 2022, and there were better breaks even through 2022 for longer periods than what we have experienced over the last 3 months. So I haven't gone through the dot plot perfectly to see what the ratio is, but it certainly feels that this is driving out longer. And I will go back to it a bit later on, but if you go off sentiment and if you solely go off price action, it does, I have to say, it feels like we are in the correction phase after a blow off top, or a top has been made. I've shown it so many times. We've had the all-time high Q4 2025, prices moved back down. We retested price action back up to the 50 EMA. We rejected from that, and that rejection has resulted in a 20% drop over the last 10 days. I mean, it really feels like this is the direction we're heading in, unfortunately. We'll come on to BTC in a minute. Let's just wrap these ones up. Bitcoin dominance, nothing really to report there. All markets have fallen equally, and so we're effectively stayed within the same range. Total 2, so everything but Bitcoin. We are at a precipice. This was the level. I don't know why this line doesn't save. It's because I don't hit save. This was the line we were looking at before. I think we tidied it up to include the wick here. We've lost that level. Yeah, sort of 1.15 trillion. We're now at 1.14 trillion. We have made a little bit of a bounce today, but we have got to edge back up there. Very similar to Bitcoin's chart, I suppose, in terms of key levels. If you imagine that 1.15 being the $86,000 level. So 12 hours to do it. Stranger things have happened. But yeah, we need to make that 100 billion back, get rested above that, close above that, and see if we can find support over the next candle or two. And then BitTensor now down at its local lows. We've basically not been, we're back at where we were Christmas Day, sort of 215 kind of area. We've not really revisited this in about a year. It's been March, April time when we went all the way down to 160. And for BitTensor, in terms of the narrative on the weekly time frame of higher highs and higher lows, I mean, we've still got a bit of a way to go. 182, it's only $30 away now, but it doesn't look great. I mean, I suppose the lower it falls, if it does form a new low, each time it forms a new low, there is a particularly good and strengthy, is that a term? Strong bounce from those levels, but it just lacks that level to recover from it. So, not looking great either on that, I'm afraid. I'll put that back onto the video. I forget. We go on to this chart here with 12-hour time frame Bitcoin. We've got the fib levels on there, and I brought it up because yesterday I mentioned it in chat. We dropped all the way down. We bounced off that 1.272 level, and then the candle that just closed 9 minutes ago. When I looked at it last, we were ever so slightly above it. I'm going to give myself the benefit of the doubt here. For those of you who are on your phone, the level was 83.6. And we were $50 below it. So pretty much on that level. I know it wicked down, but it was trying to claw its way back through. Obviously, the new candles form and price action has lost 83,000 at the moment. We'll have to give that another 11 or 12 hours or so. But the point being that we completely eviscerated, collapsed, gone through that long liquidation level, 84 to 82,000. I forgot to have a look at how coin anchors sort of recharacterize that now. So if you just bear with me, we'll load that up. And whilst it's loading, the point being that, okay, the market makers have had their fill. So could that be that short term we see some sort of relief? I mean, look, there's nothing left down here. There really isn't. I mean, I'll go on to the 3 months, see if we can build anything else. For the longer term, not really. I mean, all of this, this was the 25th, so basically the start of the week. And then the last couple of days, we've just wiped through it all, and there's just not that much left. So the next logical target, I can't see any lower than 77,675 because we just haven't done that range in such a long time. But on this chart, which is just reloaded, we're probably talking next sizable chunk is around that 90k level, which is a strong move from there. But when we look at RSIs and everything else later on, there's an argument to be made that we are very oversold. And so even if it is a relief, even if it is just temporary, that, the more logical level or direction of travel would be upwards. How long that lasts for, we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, that's that. We've gone through this one. In terms of kind of the rest of the market, so at the moment, I filtered this on the 7-day chart. So you can kind of see just blood red as we scroll down. So bit sensor, 10% in the last week, 5% in the last day. Any others that people are interested in? Chainlink, Polkadot, all suffering hard. So, it's not any one altcoin is being singled out or spared. I mean, when we go down the other end, I've never heard of Stable before, but that seems to have done all right. Hyperliquid has actually done very well over the last 7 days. It has dumped 10% today, but seems to have done quite nicely. Same with Pump Fund. Interesting that both of those seem to have done okay. Gold, bit wild. I'm looking at the Pax Gold. So obviously a strong dump today, but still over the last 7 days, still up. So like I say, the markets themselves are not looking great. We're categorizing the fear and greed on this side at 28. Interesting, the alt season still stays at 29. It's been at 29 a very long time. So either that indicator's broken, or as I say, Bitcoin and alts are just falling at the same rate, which is probably more accurate, I would say. Anissa, I will get onto gold and silver, I promise, when we go through. And so let's kind of have a look at the charts and just see what picture presents ourselves. And so we've got the standard looking chart at the moment, EMAs, and then obviously at the bottom, we've got the RSI, which I think is rather important at the moment. And in terms of the time frame, we're on the daily time frame. So I think we drew the diagonal trend line based off the 4-hour last time. You can kind of see yesterday we broke through that one. But what I'm actually quite interested in at the moment, so we haven't interacted with this for a long time, but this is the 800 EMA down there. And you can see when we came down in November, we smashed through it, but we recovered on the same day. And yesterday we came down, we hit it, we bounced off it. And then today we've kind of had that knee-jerk reaction. Now, there are times where it lines up perfectly, but you kind of got to give it sometimes a bit of pinch of salt. A couple $100 here or there is just the range that we work in. But I think all eyes right now really need to be on the next couple of daily candles. Where are we closing? Are we managing to hold above that 800 EMA, which currently sits at 83,200, let's call it? And if we can stay above that, then you could argue, well, history may just be repeating itself in that, as I mentioned, that sharp move back down to come back down and retest the lows that we saw from November before a move back up. What that move may be, I can't guarantee, but if you're looking at vectors, there's a lot of room up here to take. And any move up, I'd be looking at how it interacts. This is the daily 200 EMA, but if we put it on the weekly, the 50 EMA, how it reacts sort of with this line here coming down. As a best case scenario in the short term for me. I mean, a move from 82,000 to 95,000 will feel like the market's back on, but again, I would just caution that. If we just throw the weekly on just to see. So at the moment, 96.5, as that sort of comes down, maybe sort of 95,000 kind of level is what I'd be looking at from the weekly. Sorry, all of this stuff on there is hitting all that. So we've had that move, and the other interesting thing from it is just look where the RSI is on the daily time frame. We are just at the border of oversold, so there could be another couple of candles as we dip back down. But it does feel like relief is round the corner. When we get to this level, and the last time we got into the oversold on the daily time frame was that sharp drop from sort of the 9th of November to the 21st of November. Well, kind of similar time frame. we're talking about the 14th, 15th of January to 30th, 31st, wherever, that sort of similar 2-week kind of period that moved down, and how long it takes to get from overbought to oversold territory. So unfortunately, the RSI doesn't give us a time frame from which this can happen, but it kind of suggests that some relief is due. It is on the cards, and it's not related to price action either. So there's no guarantee that this going all the way up to 70 means that we will fully recover the loss. It just means that buyers will step in for a certain amount of time. So I would be targeting, the recovery of this full vector candle back up to about 90,000. And if we're lucky, maybe up to the 50 EMA, 90,500. Anything better than that, we'll talk about that another time. Whenever we're next live, Tuesday or whatever, if we're close to it. But in the short term, over the weekend, I think that would be a stellar outcome to recover, even to start that recovery for those back there. But that's the levels I'd be looking at, making sure we stay above 83,200, which is the 800 EMA, seeing how that RSI is playing out, given that we are touching oversold, and then looking at where those vectors are lining up, around about 89 and then 90,500. Big picture, if you want to go and try and enjoy your weekend, that's what I'd just be setting. Drop it onto the lower time frame. It's going to look really messy, so I just need to get rid of everything. You can see how that 4-hour interacts. Okay, we'll try and keep those two. Again, RSI definitely oversold. We've been bottoming in this oversold for some time, and we can see now the vectors are lining up, taking us back to this 50 EMA, which was the 88,000, which we just talked about from the daily time frame. And again, potentially some relief there. We have just seen falling with the green candles. They're not green on this chart because of how they've been filtered. They're just standard looking chart candles, which are white. Standard falling candles are grey. It has just been, over the last 15 candles, we're looking at only 4 that have actually seen any relief, and all of those have been short-lived. Hence why the RSI is down as low as it is. No, not really too sure if the 10 is going to be a player, but you can kind of see from the history of the last 2-3 weeks, the 10 has really dictated where we've gone. We did break it, and then we came back down. So we haven't interacted with the 10 since lunchtime yesterday, so 24 hours or so ago. It'd be interesting to see if that is what the barrier is at 84,000 before it rolls over. And if it is, sorry to try and throw a lot of information at you, if we hit that 10 EMA and we roll over, I think we're going to lose the 80k. That's the reality. Just that progression down will just, on the RSI, we'll just get back into sort of normal territory, and then we'll drop down again, sort of thing, which can happen on these lower time frames. We can spend longer time down there. Doesn't show too much on Bitcoin. I was trying to find a period, but it can happen. So I'd be watching just that 10. I'd like to think that we can get a move all the way up to, like I say, 88, which again will feel like a victory. It'll feel like a win, but it's where we were yesterday. Matter of fact, Wednesday, I think we actually got into the 90s. And so, yes, we can celebrate that we're on the move back up, but I think it's got to be tempered with the reality of price is not on our side at the moment, unfortunately. Price action is not on our side at the moment. And sentiment certainly isn't there to help drive it through. Anyway, I think we're only really interested in sort of the short-term side of things. The big picture stuff I covered on Tuesday. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning. I am nervous. 86 was on the weekly time frame. If that thing closes, then we need to consider what we're doing here very seriously. We have got 24 hours to 48, 60 hours to right that wrong, to get back above that level. Otherwise, I gotta question it. I already am questioning it. I've been massively questioning it. My concerns are where they are, but looking on the weekly time frame, nothing in there is screaming, "Don't worry, guys, we're gonna recover from this." It doesn't, and we can talk about liquidity coming in the future. It doesn't matter. The reality of where we sit now is what we want to be dealing with. And this just doesn't look great. Everything is lining up. As I say, that move up, rejection from there, come back down. Now we've lost that level. this confirms on Sunday night, Monday into Monday morning, action will need to be taken next week. And that's just the reality of it. Okay, BitTensor, daily time frame. Let's just get rid of some of these squiggles. Sorry. I'll just hit remove. Okay. So kind of similar to where Bitcoin is, except for the retest is a lot more compressed because it took longer for BitTensor to find its bottom. That happened around about Christmas, so about a month ago rather than 2 months ago. Sorry, I'm going to have a drink of tea because my mouth's gone dry as anything. And it's stone cold, which I absolutely hate. But now we are testing that bottom, and 214 on the daily time frame is where we closed at the bottom around Christmas Day. So similar kind of position. We've really got to speed up, but step in. Buyers have got to step in here and find some sort of recovery. And a loss of that, the reality of it is 200, sub 200. What's left of sub 200? It's 180 and 160 levels. And then below that, it's levels you don't really want to be talking about. So now is the time for BitTensor. And we did spend probably 2 weeks over the Christmas period around here. You can see how that's reflected in the RSI, that although we came to oversold, we just hugged the bottom for a while before we had that nice move up 200 to 300, a 50% increase in price action. But of course, we've just gone and recovered all of that. And this just is what I don't, maybe not what I don't get with BitTensor, because it's an altcoin, I understand that. But this is where I really feel with altcoins, we're just getting exit liquidity. Price moves up, everyone gets excited, whilst the big players are leaving. And once the volume of that dries up, price just naturally falls back down again. And that is, for me, the story that we've had for the last 2 years. And this is almost like the death rattle of trying to get it out. And as I say, a loss here, we're really going to see some low prices. We got vectors down to 180. We got this wick down to 167. And then after that, it ain't pretty. So yeah, that's cautious, incredibly cautious with altcoins. I think they are just a risk too far at the moment. If I'm being perfectly honest, I never bought back the BitTensor that I sold at 295. So I'm sat with quite a bit of USDT at the moment. But as I put in chat, I'm probably not interested unless this thing falls down to double figures. Maybe I might rechange my mind if we start seeing some activity, 120, 160 sort of level. But yeah, not looking great. We take it down to the 4 hour. Again, starting to make a clearer picture in terms of where this fall was. The 10 and the 20 dictating price action, up to the 50 and a rejection. We've got some vectors. As I say, we are low on the RSI. I can quite honestly see a move up, maybe back to sort of 230 level, and then another sort of move back down. And obviously, if Bitcoin goes on a run to 98, we may see it break through this kind of stuff. But if Bitcoin's just going to follow that sort of 10 and 20 EMA as well, with the rest of the market moving with it, which is what it seems to be doing. Bitcoin dominance has remained pretty stable. Everything's moving in tandem at the moment. Then I can't really see much energy beyond that. I mean, it'll be a 10%, maybe a little bit more, 10%, 15% uplift. No, 10% uplift. So a fairly good uplift. And it'll feel good at the time, but the reality of where some of us were a month ago, half a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, maybe not so much. Down on an even smaller time frames, we can actually see, look at that. We're starting to climb out of this. Now, interestingly, you could almost argue there's some sort of bullish divergence because the RSI is going up, and I appreciate the last two candles, last 2 hours, BitTensor's price has gone up, but generally price action is falling whilst the RSI is building. So I'd like to think that we may get that relief rally. We're talking about a couple of vectors on the hourly to take us through. It's the hourly now, so we interact with the 50 and we can quite easily break it, and then suddenly the 200s at that 233 level that we were talking about which we've seen has been a fairly decent sticking point for us in the past. So yeah, so that's where that sort of sits. What have I done? Go back onto the daily and then just have a look at XRM, which has made one hell of a recovery. Well, loss. Recovered the vectors there perfectly. Just taken the last vector yesterday down here. So that $288 million worth of washing money, which drove that price up, has now been retraced. As I mentioned on Tuesday, it's still, you take that blip out and it's still actually not doing too bad. You might say it's just gone and lost base support. I mean, bearing in mind this is a 3-month time frame, so a fairly decent time frame there. But as I drew on Tuesday, had you not have had this funny business with washing of that money, we're just kind of still working within this range. We're at the base of it now. Maybe that relief rally that I've just been talking about may cause Monero to continue on its move back up. RSI is cooling down very nicely as well. There might be a play there to be had. So certainly something I will be looking at, be monitoring. If I just clear this, I think my only sort of two levels that I'd look at from a daily point of view is, can we come back and retest this level at 418, 420? A lot of candles opening and closing in and around here. So maybe it comes back. And then I suppose I just wonder, do we get some sort of sneaky movement down to 390 and that 200 EMA? Possibly. If it went down to the 200 EMA, RSI is going to be through the bottom. I'd be fairly comfortable with a low leveraged move up there and just monitor it as a potential move. But as we stand at the moment, I've only got a gold trade open. So gold, well, this is Pax gold, obviously. So if you see, because this is done in USDT, it's ever so slightly different price to gold. So this is 144. Gold at the moment is 113, and it's just that difference in USDT value. But I sort of watched this move back down. So obviously I was long. I got stopped out yesterday when this came back down, but it was a fairly tight stop, so fine. And then woke up this morning with a move down to the 20 EMA. I thought I'll get back in. I got back in about 570, so 5075 sort of area. And we'll just see how that one goes. I'm playing this one pretty fast and loose, to be honest. Given how overextended gold is, when the market's open, this thing might continue just to fall back down. There's a vector candle there, right on the 50 EMA, 4,700. It feels like that's the perfect place for it to actually bottom. And so if we start losing that 10 EMA on the daily time frame, we get close to it, I'm just going to cut. Matter of fact, I might actually after this just move my stop loss to break even, and just regardless what happens. But yeah, that's just in that sort of passive kind of wallet that we're looking to do. Down on the 4 hour, and can you just, I know there's a lot of vectors here, so just bear it with mind. See if I can just turn those off for a second. You just see how, so gold's movement, that move from 4,500, it's on the 4 hour time frame. So basically the last week, just look how much time we spent overbought. We're finally having that correction. There's no guarantee, by the way, that it has to go from overbought to oversold. It could find a bottom in here. But the fact that we have had a fairly decent correction, as I say, sort of 5,600 down to, I mean, I saw it today, sub 5,000. So $600 correction in a day for gold is unheard of. I suppose so the moves we've been seeing going up. And I'm not necessarily saying that the run for this is actually over. This has been a fairly decent cool off. I'm gonna have to put this back on so we can get the 50 EMA, because look, what have we come back into? We're resting quite nicely at the moment on the 50 EMA, something we've not done since a week ago, 16th of Jan. 2 weeks ago, sorry, 16th of Jan. So about time we had some sort of correction here. And, if you were looking for sort of entries, I'd prefer the RSI to be a little bit lower, of course, but if you were looking for sort of entries, you'd be wanting to see how it reacted. Now we've got that 50 EMA building, and if we can get a move up, try and take advantage. And this is the one that I think is more like a mania kind of coin at the moment, because if we can get that turnaround, this thing will continue at a rate of knots. I mean, You know, we just go back into its history. Just look here. So we go back to the beginning of the year. You know, this was devastating. Everyone thought the run was over. I can't find it. Price range. You know, we lost 7% of our value. It went from 4,500 to 4,400, whatever it was. It's over, guys. Absolutely. When actually, it just had to cool off. It found some time there, and we sort of climbed out of it. And now we're $1,500 higher, or we've got to $1,500 higher than that. So, I mean, this is a bigger correction, but it's because the price is bigger now. This is an $11 or 11% correction. So a very strong correction in that price. But that's enough to cool things off a little bit. You know, teach people about greed, give them a bloody nose, etc. And then if they want to continue with it, they will. And as I say, what will, you know, most likely happen is that we'll take out that high, and then, you know, in the next 2 weeks we'll be, you know, north of 6,000, and we won't even realize that this drop even happened. You know, we'll be over here. Everyone will be talking about 7,000 as the next target. So I think there's still a bit of hype in and around gold and silver and other precious metals, and so that is an opportunity to be played. Silver's fallen a little bit harder, but to be fair, silver has run harder, longer, faster. Now, this is tokenized silver, so my data doesn't go back that far, so I'm going to have to use the silver chart for this one. So the prices are ever so slightly different, but this is the actual silver chart. So let me just get a drink of water. So we come down again strong, yeah, from 120 all the way down to 95. So $25 correction over the last 24 hours, which, you know, 25% correction. Fairly well. I don't think we've ever seen one like that. But we have seen it come down, lose this 50 EMA several times, and then just continue on back up. So don't necessarily write it off yet. Don't worry, I'm doing to clean up. I'm just getting rid of the drawings. I mean, on the daily, we're only just out of the overbought territory, and we've kind of held. Let's see if I can draw a trend line on the RSI here. Okay, we're battling with that trend line at the moment. But on the daily, all we've done is come back, hit the 20 EMA perfectly, and we've bounced off it. You know, we've not even bothered to come back to the 50 EMA. The 50 EMA sits at $80. If we lose, tell you what, if we lose that 20 EMA, I think it's short time. And you could short it down to 50 and see what happens. And there's still a decent possibility that this thing continues. I'm just going to, don't know what chart I have it on. But I'm going to just blank these for a second. See if we can draw some. This goes back to April. Trying to find these angular step changes. I mean, this one has lost this one. So there's an argument to be said that it's, unless it recovers it today, it may well just make that move down. And lo and behold, I mean, it didn't quite get down to 80. I'm sure I could probably draw these better. But it gets into the 80s, so close to that 50 EMA we were talking about. Oops. If I do that, so now I've messed everything up. Sorry, someone was ringing me. Anyway, I've gone on to the logarithmic chart now. Right, let's just abandon that because I can't bother to redraw it. But we have lost that final angular step change. And it's just a case of what's it want to do over the next 24 hours to determine whether or not it can recover that. But I'm not writing the precious metals off yet. Yes, they've had strong pullbacks, but so's the rest of the market. Back up here, Ethereum, let's put everything on. So we are under that 800 EMA. We've lost it before and managed to recover it. We're back at so this is fairly similar to Bitcoin's, except for I don't think the explosive run has been as impressive. But we are back retesting. You know, 2,600 is the level we got to in November. So we're just slightly north of that at the moment. But again, you know, I'd be looking. It needs to get back above 294 or 2,940. Get back above this 800 EMA. Give us some confidence that this thing is ultimately turning around. And then we got the battles. The 50's there, but actually the real battle has been this 200 EMA at 330. The problem we have, we lose this level. It's a tiny little vector here. And I think we go back into this noise. So May last year. Prior to, do you remember in July we had that big run up for Ethereum? But that noise there, and it's pick a level. You know, do you go for the medium of it, 2,500? Do you go for the base of it, 2,100? Yeah. And then there's a lot of noise down there. So I think he's got a bit of work to do. He needs to find another $200 really and get above that. And I'll give it the weekend. You know, not much is happening over the weekend. So let's just see where that goes. Any others that we really want to cover? I mean, look, the rest of altcoins. That's why I'm not really covering them. Just look at them. They're all just Pippin. I'll come back to this one. Sol, SPX, XRP. I mean, Zcash is at least finding some sort of base here. Hasn't lost it from that move up. Coming close to this 200 EMA. Okay, fair enough. But let's have a look at Pippin, because yesterday I thought I'm going to try and place a little cheeky long on Pippin, because I said to us on Tuesday, oh, look how it's gone. If it ever comes back down to that sort of 30 cents level, I'm going to go. I put in like $100 long on it, and yeah, before I even went to bed last night, that was gone. So the thing is, this one does seem to fly. Like it's moved from here to where it was before. So it would be 130%. So I am tempted to keep on trying to catch along here, because it's going to move very fast for me. And if I can just do it with a small amount, but you know, get a decent amount of that with some leverage, I might be able to make well, certainly recover the $100 I lost yesterday on it. And the only reason I say that is, as I say, this seems to have a life of its own. And when the market is moving, this thing likes to move a little bit faster. And at the moment, we're just chasing the trades which can, you know, take us the highest possible return. We're not bothered about narrative. We're not bothered about fundamentals or anything. It's just, what are people into? And I know, you know, it may seem stupid to be looking for longs, but just where everything is with the RSI continually falling, etc., I think going short blindly is the worst thing. We're at base support at the moment across the majority of alts and cryptocurrency. We might have slightly breached it, but we're still waiting for confirmation. Things are looking oversold. I'm just trying to see if I can get a little bit of a pump from a bounce. And if we can't, so be it. Bitcoin continues to fall through that 83,000 level. So I will be eyeing this. And again, you know, even just coming back to the 50 EMA is a 9-cent move, which would probably be like a 50%, 40% move on the day. So you could get a decent return even from that. And that doesn't seem like too much of a stretch, to be honest. In terms of other things, I mean, the total is looking pretty diabolical right now. Similar kind of position to Bitcoin, but in terms of the narrative, even today or this week, rejected from the 10 EMA at sort of 3 trillion. And the question is, look where the 200 EMA is at the moment. It's lined up lovely with where the base of the tariff crash from last year sits. VIX, it did spike up, but it is recovering. I don't know why it's not moving across daily. So earlier on today, it was up at 19. It's starting to come back down. It's not quite, for me, it's not quite when it's high, you buy, as in 27, 30 kind of level, but interesting to see that's moving down. Dollar, it made that bottom and it's kind of working back up. Is it going to work all the way back up to 97 for a Kobo? I think that could possibly be a move, to be honest with you. This and then that. But seeing as no asset seems to be tracking the inverse of what the dollar's doing, I'm not sure how much weight it has anymore. NASDAQ, I mean, despite its falling the last 2 days, still managed to keep above 50 EMA, still managed to keep above the 10 EMA, still in an upward trajectory, and with a nice little vector candle for it to move in towards. And then similarly, we made an all-time high with the S&P on Wednesday. We've pulled back. We didn't even lose the 50 EMA. We're just trending upwards. I think next week we'll be talking about not just what it does in 7,000s, but how far into the 7,000s it could possibly go. Some of these other, they are worth noting. Circle is, you know, about to lose this support level. That could be interesting. Nvidia climbing nicely. Palantir seems to be falling. I've drawn this line at the moment of just, do I sell? So I'm just considering that. The RSI is making me think, is that just the wrong time to do it? Tesla's had a bit of a fall today. I don't know why. It had decent earnings. Well, I thought it had maybe not decent, but green earnings. Maybe it's on the news of them moving their focus from cars to robots. I don't know. Not into it as much. Coinbase has lost 200, which interesting that this gap has filled. I didn't notice that. That gap from May last year has finally filled. But I'm just wondering where the noise is from here. We've lost a lot of key levels. Microsoft, a lot of people blaming Microsoft for this crash. They had some their earnings that came out on Wednesday, and then obviously Thursday the crash happened. Again, the earnings were positive. So, surprise 900, well, just shy of a billion in terms of revenue. I think what scared them is they made some comment about the amount of money they'd put into effectively AI. They weren't really seeing the return on that. So maybe people are starting to put two and two together and suggesting that is the AI bubble just drying up, and we'll get more information on that as other AI enthusiasts, shall we say, produce their earnings. We'll wait and see. But they announced the market did drop, but there's a hell of a gap there for them to attack. MicroStrategy, it has now lost the 150. I think alarm bells times needs to be, there's not much between 150 or 143 where it is now and 100. I think you got about 120 to have a look at. And as I say, sub 100 could be quite an attractive buy. Astrid is climbing up because I suppose some of you guys are just buying, converting your TauX or your Tau Wave or whatever it is into this. Liquidity is quite low. But it'll be interesting. I'll reserve judgment on that one. TauX, I think people are just exiting that. Tau Wave, again, that's oblong, isn't it? Moving down. Let's have a look. Hopefully, I need to have covered that gold and silver sort of thing. It depends how early you got in on gold and silver, whether you're holding it or you're just futures trading it. But yeah, I mean, for those of you that maybe bought, when we talked about silver in the group back in sort of 2019, 2020, silver was like $12, $20. So hopefully some of you are sitting on a potential 5x, regardless of where the price currently sits at the moment. What part of the bear cycle we in? 20% bull, 30% bear. I think that's more than I thought. The no idea, and it scares me 50%. I think the reason you're scared is probably because I don't know, but I would argue it's because you want it to be a bull, but it's looking more like a bear. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Is I'm going to talk about this at the cuddle if it can wait 2 weeks, but managing our expectations, reading the data we see rather than just waiting for an event to happen in the future, which we don't have a timescale on. And as a trader, where's the better position for that to stand? So we'll hopefully be able to go through that in a couple of weeks' time. I appreciate the cuddle falls on Valentine's Day, so not many of you will be attending, but obviously we'll be recording. It will go out from there, as long as I don't get lynched by the crowd that is there for being a bit of a doomsayer. Look, I think that's probably it in terms of today. It hasn't been a great 48 hours, of course. We have been in recent times in a worse position than we currently are at the moment. But you just play the market as you see it. And if we do lose, we've already lost 86, so I'm already, I've given it enough chances. Weekly close decisions will be made next week. But if we continue to go down without even waiting for the weekly close, I'll be gone. I mean, this is how the portfolio sits at the moment. The business is still 100%. I haven't sold it because I'm trying to do that different mentality long term. Doesn't matter. Just keep buying every month. But from the personal side, the BTC is 45% because I've sold all my Tau. That's sitting in USDT, and then I've been trading a bit. So been, making a bit of extra cash on that side there. And I suppose it's not the worst place to sit right now, but I feel like I could be doing more with the Bitcoin. to be honest. And maybe not sell it all, but sell a portion of it, and just wait and ride it out. I think I actually mistyped. I put in Discord about, I think my average buy was 28,900. It's not. I just checked on my portfolio, and it's 34,000. It's my average buy over the last 3 years. So it's still a 2.5x. It could have been better, obviously, but some of it is from £13,000 or $18,000, whatever it was at the time. So I can justify a sell here and just being like, it is what it is. Obviously, I'd be selling some that I bought higher, because I bought Bitcoin. I think the highest I paid is like 107,000. So I'm not immune to that sort of side of things. But if it's just about accumulating BTC, and we do think, or I think, that we might have a few months more of pain, then taking a side step's probably the logical thing to do. And if I'm wrong, just keeping some skin in the game. So yeah, that's where we're at. Obviously, I will keep people updated if any decisions are made, but I'm likely not going to make a decision until Monday, unless we lose 80k, shall we say. And then I really will be at the computer and deciding what is the best thing to do. Right. I've had an error message on my screen. Hopefully it is still working and you have been able to see it. Try and enjoy the rest of your weekend and the rest of your day. Obviously, I'm around if you need anything. And yeah, I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.